Make sure I got this one saved to the case. Damn, this probably ain't gonna pull it. Yeah, say that one. All right, Swaziland.
SWAZI. Swaziland is another part of the Zulu territory that they don't want to acknowledge as being Zulu. Third picture from the at the top, third picture from the left.
Yeah.
That one. Okay, now let's go back to the say that, and then we're gonna look at these maps to look at where everybody was situated at prior to colonization, and then you can see clear what I'm talking about when I say that they were supposed to be the protectorates for the little people.
For the people that are kind of new to this, these black people being indigenous on, you know, in America, could you please paint a picture of like pre-colonialism, how we were, what we were doing, colonialism, and like we said earlier, how we died, you know, by the pen. Could you kind of like walk us through that whole, you know, that whole process?
So before the conquistadors came in search of the gold and the wealth of the land, the way that we were living was under matriarchal rules, right? And we all had family banks. We didn't have a centralized banking system. And that's when they captured the banking system with the bank robberies, the Billy the Kids and the Bonnie and Clydes. Those are all staged robberies and for the purposes of seizing our banks, right? So the people start listening to the people that came in, telling them how to centralize the banking system. And this was warned against by the founding fathers. But before they came, we didn't have war over here. We didn't have prison over here. We had every shade of people. That's why it's called the Great Melding Pot over here. And we didn't get involved in the skirmishes that took place on the other lands across the water, right? But then they involved us when they came here in 1492. They actually came in the 1100s to scout the land. And once they seen they was losing the war in Europe, they decided to come and sack our land. So they gave us a Bible, and the Bible was the beginning of our downfall. So the appearance of legitimacy using the paperwork of an interim government is what's been keeping us in bondage. Their book say that we have to be freed from the law and delivered unto grace. And the grace is the royal noble character of the people. And so in order to be released from the law, you have to find your sovereign capacity. So what do we use for references? The Dred Scott case. They said that Dred Scott was 3/5 of a human being, and that's why a black man had no rights that a white man was bound to respect. What we didn't know at that time was when they say a white man, they talking about the royal family of Europe that came over here with the conquistadors as the attackers in a fifth dimensional chess game known as a conjure war, right? So when they came over here, they locked us down using the paper chains, and the paper chains is called adhesion contracts. So they use their the story of the Mayflower. The Mayflower's real original name was called the good ship Plymouth. So Malcolm said that we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. What is he talking about? He's talking about the allegation on the world court that we crashed our landmass into the good ship Plymouth. They changed the name from Plymouth to Mayflower, right? So this is a cover-up. they wrote the contract in the blood of Christalicus, because the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled to pain, and they're using this Babylonian money magic to counter the contract. And the contract is called a constitution. And it's a secondary constitution to the original constitution that was governed by the people of the land. So this is how they came in and swindled us out of everything with adhesion contracts.
Okay, so that's, you know, it's interesting because we don't hear about none of this. You know what I'm saying? We don't hear, nobody has a claim, but at the same time, a lot of us as black people, we're quote unquote African Americans, a lot of them are saying, oh, you know, my grandma said I was Cherokee. Oh, my grandma said I was Choctaw, and etc. We're like, you know, and we're thinking that, you know, we like the Indian power people on, you know, like on what's that show, the Lone Ranger. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Tonto and all
Tonto.
that. Yeah, Tonto.
You know, Tonto, a Spanish word, means stupid.
Mm. That makes more sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But so basically, what you're saying is that a lot of us here that we're already here, all these tribes you're talking about look like woolly-haired individuals that look like me and you, correct?
No, not all of them. You had tribes that were of Asian descent, but most of them was from the West Coast, South Pacific coastline, because we used to do trade with Asia on the West Coast of the United States with both China and Japan long before Columbus ever came. They found those ships from those traders that we used to trade in goods and services for. And we also traded wives among the royal families to make political and family ties and to give us a union across the water. Right? Same thing on the other side, on the East Coast, we was trading with African nations hundreds of years, thousands of years before Columbus ever came. So that tells us out the gate that that's a bullshit story, that Columbus didn't know where he was going. Right? They calling us Indians because he thought he was going to India, but India wasn't India yet. So what the fuck is we talking about? Right? India was Hindustan. Right? And so where's we getting this Indian shit from? Then they gave us the other titles, the Negroes, the Moors. None of those are self-identifying terms. When you let your enemy define who you are, then you become your enemy's servant. Right? So you have to make your own proclamation as to who you are. You got to go from 3/5 compromised, right? Because you compromise when you in incompetent status in law. But when you fully realize you 5/5, once you 5/5, you are a whole. And now they don't have jurisdiction over you because you can see they whole shenanigans for what it is. That's why you never see, like for instance, my field of study was law, medicine, and history. Right? So what do the law got to do with history? What do the history got to do with medicine? And what do the medicine got to do with the law? So when you start going through it, you see that they speaking in terms that on purpose, using foreign languages to speak over the head of the common people so that we can't really understand what we're getting ourselves into when we're making these contracts with them. And then they give us an overload of data to absorb in order to make a competent decision. So we just accept the adhesion contract, which is holding them in power.
Another interesting point, I always see, like you said, I remember you was breaking it down about what you said, mirror tribes, right?
Yeah.
Because whenever I look at ancient Tamaray or Kemet, whatever you want to call it, and I look at some Native Americans, I see the feathers, then I see a namuz. You know what I'm saying? I see an apron. You know what I'm saying? I see totem poles. I see obelisks. Was the connection from there to how did they intermingle? How did they have the similarities?
The similarities of the mirror tribes is that they come from a same custom, right? And the reason why you have mirror tribes, so if one tribe loses a part of the history, they can look at the mirror tribes, customs, and traditions and remember what they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you over here, when you like a Mississippian, one of the oldest tribes, and you looking across multiple cultures, you can read all of the cultures simultaneously together, and that's going to show you that what's going on the land by frequency and vibration of the people.
Mm-hmm. And as far as like I was going back earlier about like painting the picture, because I see these different, like in Georgia, for example, we have the Etowah mounds that are right up above Atlanta, and it's right on the river. I'm seeing all these mounds all over America. You know what I mean? So, and I saw there's another big one in I think it was St. Louis. I haven't been there yet, but
They all
I'm in
over.
there. Yeah, they all over. And I personally I had the experience to go to Teotihuacan. You know what I'm saying? And seeing the sun and the moon pyramid. And, and I saw brothers on the walls that look like me and you just sitting there doing their thing.
Yeah.
So is it going back to like a timeline? What time are we talking about as far as these us being here on this continent, building and the beginning of it and kind of like the downfall?
Look at the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
Mm-hmm.
3,600 years ago, Thoth was instructed by his father to go and civilize that portion of the land called Egypt today.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's 36,000 years ago. That's two what they call precession cycles back. Now, the complex is there to tell the people over here something, because this is where the Sphinx is looking at. It's looking over here. Right? So if the Sphinx is looking over here, what is her posture saying? She waiting. What's she waiting on? She waiting on the master to come with a lion's paw and the master's grip and raise her from her state. And a Sphinx in flight is called a griffin. Right? And the griffin is the eagle-headed lion. Right? And the eagle head is represented by the chief. And the chiefs lead out in representing of the matriarchs. Because the chief that advocate the matriarchal restoration is the one who understands that the land cannot be sold. It can only be contracted until the Jubilee year. This is the Jubilee year. So now we follow the Indigenous Rights Acts, United Nations, Indigenous Rights Act, United States, and we follow the FEMA document for continuity of government. We understand that they have to destroy all GMO foods. So you see in all of these food places been being destroyed for the last 2 years, ever since destroying GMOs, because in the new cycles, we will not allow GMOs to be entered into the food chain for people or animals. We want to go back to the organic living by restoring the land and then living off the land by restoring it. The land gonna take care of all our needs as long as we take care of the land, right? And all this land is tribal land. And even DC, because we staked the totem pole in DC to commemorate the 400 years, then they marched the totem pole for 400 miles, 1 mile to the year, right? And then they staked it in DC because that was the so-called crime scene that was classified as a independent city-state.
Okay. Yeah, that that makes perfect sense. Like I said, I've been ever since I've been we talked about this prior, ever since I've been talking. If some of y'all look back at my other video, I had a good bill with the brother Dr. Gabriel Hernandez-El, and he started talking about I think the name of it was "We Came Before Columbus." We kind of building on that now. Yeah. That's what he titled. He titled that after the book, but it's all connected now. And like I told you earlier, it's a hot topic because a lot of people are starting to, a lot of black folks are starting to look in their ancestors and they come to find out, that they're natives. You know what I'm saying? They weren't slaves. Could you kind of build on that as well? Talking about specifically how we were all told in 5th grade that we were slaves, you know what I mean? That we all came in on all these boats, but in reality, that's farthest from the truth.
Right. So because of the Conjure War that was tied to the blood oath contract that was written in the blood of Crispus Attucks, Albert Pike came in to institute the principles of what we know as the Illuminati. And the goal of that was it would take them 200 years to position themselves to take the entire world over. So it was the tribesmen around the world that came together to try to figure out a solution for this white supremacist colonizing agent that was traveling the world seeking to devour nations, right? So Sukarno called the Bangdong Conference so that the original tribes of the earth can come together and figure out solutions. On the heels of the Bangdong Conference, this is when Malcolm started talking about going to the United Nations to argue the issue of human rights, because civil rights and human rights are not the same thing.
When you talk about like conjuring wars, because I know we know it is. Could you go like a little bit more detail what a conjuring war is specifically?
So they use the principles of magic, and in the principles of magic, the magicians challenge each other to use their psychic ability, their spell craft abilities to conquer in the wars. A good example for you to do a study to understand what I mean by priest wars, you have to go to the King Tut era dynasty and read the history of Akhenaten and King Tut, right? And when you see that they went from the the Amun to the I-10, and the conflict that it was causing, the resolution was to declare a conjure war, right? So it's the same conjure war, it's just a repeat cycle so that we can unravel the larger scale conjure war that the enemy that was in control of it lost control of the conjure. So now they have to call in the big guns, the only one that can figure out what went wrong with the conjure. Well, the thing that went wrong is the ones who was selling the snake poison bought their own poison, and they took that shit too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it cost them to try to hold us down because they couldn't remember how to help us get back up.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't remember what they had did, how they had infiltrated us and challenged us to the war, feathers versus fezzes.
Mm.
Right? So we had to claim a fez by learning. So how did they raise us? With poor education?
Mm-hmm.
So the only way that we're going to ever get out of this situation is we all have to start learning independently of the system. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, our elders understood one thing. We cannot allow the enemy to continue to educate our children because they'll never give us the tools and the resources we need to
Mm-hmm.
overcome the problem that we faced with that's
Mm-hmm.
keeping us in this adversarial position.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we being held back on purpose, but what we not realizing is the only thing they holding us back from is claiming our birthright,
Mm-hmm.
because part of the competition was any one of us that claimed the birthright to the land can bring an end to the conjure by exposing the guilty party.
Mm.
Right? So Noble Drew Ali didn't expose directly the guilty party,
Mm-hmm.
but he left a series of clues in his works
Mm-hmm.
where those who don't understand the language of the chiefs, they won't never pick up the subtle clues that he leave for
Mm-hmm.
us to know who the adversary is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, sooner or later, they came to the conclusion the children are going to have to start educating themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why are they going to have to do? The only way that's going to happen is if they birth elders back in that was of high learning.
Mm.
Because they're going to come back in with a genetic disposition to research.
Mm-hmm.
This genetic coding, as they research, is going to start layer building an image in the subconscious mind that's going to serve as a surveying tool across the land. Right? So when you read all of the legends of off the reservations, right? They telling the legends that our elders told them when they separated our elders from our community to teach them on the reservation the ways of our people. Right? So they continuously tell the story that their elders told them. They talking about our big mamas with hair like this and skin like this. Those are the elders that was the griots, the storytellers. Right? So the griots and storytellers became researchers like J.A. Rogers. Right? Like Albert Churchward. Like Gerald Massey. People who teach theyself. Like Madam H.P. Blavatsky. Right?
Indeed.
She didn't go to, these people didn't go to Catholic school or Protestant school.
That's the truth.
They were all educated on the land by experiencing certain things as they encounter new information. So this is going to leave breadcrumbs for Hansel and Gretel because it's going to take a male and a female to figure it out. She going to be the psychic channel. He's going to be the brain. Pinky in the brain. Pinky is Pinky Tuscadero. Happy Days. Right? That was the old lady, Arthur Fonzarelli. Right? The Fonz.
The Fonz.
Right? And the Fonz is notorious for a leather jacket. A leather jacket means you cool. And Kanye wore a leather jacket because Big Tookie was cold. And Big Tookie was cold because Big Tookie was froze. Right? So the man on ice now, a man on fire. He's stomping with the big boots. The newest Kanye meme, Kanye walking with the big boots.
I've seen it.
The big chief is ready to stomp across the land. He's telling you he's coming. Right? So when we tell the stories of what's taking place on the land, it's because we can communicate with each other by little simple means like what we just did.